In the military, we have what's called TTPs, tactics, techniques, and procedures. And TTPs are developed over the course of time based on real-world experience. They're developed so that our units can be effective and successful and so that we can save lives. We have TTPs as it relates to school safety too. But Mr. Chair, if a tree falls in the forest and no one's around to hear it, does it make a sound? In 1990, the federal government passed the Gun-Free School Zones Act. In 1994, we got the Gun-Free Schools Act. But then in 1999, the seminal modern school shooting in history at Columbine occurred. We learned a lot by virtue of the failure of law enforcement to respond in a timely manner at Columbine, and yet we didn't necessarily implement those lessons into our TTPs, and then we had Virginia Tech here in the Commonwealth in 2007. 2018 saw a horrific school shooting at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida, and we learned even more. We learned that law enforcement, in fact, in some instances, should have gone in based on what they were trained, but chose not to because they said there was ambiguity, lack of clarity, and one might argue that we had hired the wrong people in law enforcement, but students died by virtue of not having implemented the lessons that had been learned, and it continues in 2022, even again here in Virginia in Newport News, as a kindergarten student shot their teacher. We learned from the New York Times that there were at least 3 times the school was warned, and we know from the TTPs that where these warnings exist, action should be taken, but it wasn't. And so what House Bill 495 would do is take the lessons we've already learned, that we've already paid for vis-a-vis our taxes in studying these horrific tragedies, specifically but not exclusively from the Virginia Center for School and Campus Safety, which we established and we fund, but which has no role in telling schools what the best tactics, techniques, and procedures are, right? That's where we are. We've studied it, we've learned from it, but we haven't implemented the lessons that we've learned, and our kids continue to suffer more than they need to. What the bill says is that the board shall incorporate compliance with the standards of school safety as accountability measures as standards of accreditation. It says that to be accredited, our schools will take the lessons that we've already learned, that we've already studied through Virginia taxpayer-funded organizations like the Virginia Center for School and Campus Safety, and they will come up with plans to implement for school safety, right? We saw this in Delegate Cohen's bill as it relates to evacuating disabled students from the second floor of schools, right? Schools should have a plan to evacuate disabled students from the second floor should there be a fire. I think it left the committee unanimous. I think it should have. This is that. This is that. We know what best practices are in the horrific events that I've outlined here. We identified the threat in 1990. We didn't do anything about it. We identified the threat again in 94. It poked us in the eye in 1999. It killed students in Virginia in Blacksburg in 2007. We saw it brought so close to home in Florida at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas in 2018, and then in Newport News in 2022 with kindergartner. But there are still no accreditation standards that require that schools have best practices for school safety, and that's what this bill does.
Thank you, Delegate. Are there any questions from the committee? Comments? Is there anyone in the room to speak in favor of the bill? Anyone in the room to speak against the bill? And it looks like it's just 2 of y'all, but I do ask to please keep it brief.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Stacey Haney on behalf of the School Boards Association. School safety is of utmost importance, and so I'm not speaking in opposition to the bill, but I do just want to make a couple points and raise a couple concerns. A lot of what the delegate was referring to in his presentation of the bill is already done as part of our school safety audits. The Virginia Center for School and Campus Safety provides extensive training to school divisions where we are required to do a lot of these things already as a part of our audits. And the concern that I have is with tying it to accreditation status. So we'd have a school that could lose its accreditation status based on, these safety measures. I think is problematic. It's not what the standards of accreditation were designed to measure. So we have some concerns there, but the overall goal of improving and increasing safety of our schools is something that we welcome the opportunity to work with the delegate and the committee to find common ground on how to improve school safety.
Thank you.
Chad Stewart with the Virginia Education Association. We also really appreciate the spirit of working to improve school safety for students. I think we mostly have a concern with the vehicle for this bill. Certainly there are not many parameters put on what the Virginia Board of Education could come up with, and we think it's well within the jurisdiction of this body to set certain standards of what you would be expecting out of them. In addition, we're also very concerned about our current accreditation systems and the ability of the Office of School Quality, which supports schools that lose accreditation, to provide adequate support to them. JLARC found in 2020 report that this office is severely understaffed and doesn't have the resources to do much more than simple compliance exercises. So we'd be quite worried about handing this over to the accreditation process when it's already quite underfunded and there's not really the support mechanism there for schools that wouldn't meet these standards. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any additional questions or comments from the committee? I don't see any. This committee operates by motion.
Get my button passed.
Delegate Chair,
Just speaking to the bill,
you have the floor.
I love the concept. School safety is something that all of us are, should be at the paramount to what we're doing. I'm kind of with them on this, that I'm not sure that the accreditation standard is the right way to do it, but I highly encourage you to keep coming with this and let's figure out where it does fit. I'm not trying to kill your bill or speak against your bill. I want this, but I'm concerned that it's not in the right place as well, if that makes sense. And if you could speak to that.
Yeah, well, okay, this is very simple.
Delegate.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is very simple. If you think that schools should be allowed to be accredited who don't incorporate the best practices as it relates to school safety, then vote against this bill. But if you think that the schools that we send our children to should incorporate best practices as it relates to school safety in order to be accredited, then do vote for this bill. If you guys don't think that our schools in this day and age, given the lessons we've learned, should have as an accreditation requirement that they've incorporated the best practices for school safety, vote against the bill.
Thank you, Delegate. Again, this committee operates by motion. I see Delegate LaVere Bowling.
I do have a motion, Mr. Chair, to move to lay this on the table.
Do I have a second? There's been a motion to lay this bill on the table with a second. Clerk, can you please open the roll? Clerk, can you please close the roll?